From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Coming up, Governor Doug Ducey signed a bill that's a game changer. We'll tell you how this affects emergency voting centers here in Arizona.
Following the death of 4 people this spring, employees of the Grand Canyon are struggling to find solutions that balance the experience of the popular tourist attraction and safety.
Plus, Phoenix Bishop Thomas Olmsted preaches to crowds in the nation's capital, calling for an end to abortion and the strengthening of traditional marriage.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Imani Stevens.
And I'm Eliav Gabay. Thank you for joining us. There's been another death at Grand Canyon National Park. A 69-year-old woman from Peoria fell to her death yesterday. That makes 4 fatalities this year.
Cronkite News reporter Jody Guerrero joins us now. And Jody, you were at the park recently. What did you learn about what the park is doing to help keep people safe?
There are barriers and signs along the south rim of the canyon that warn people of the hazards. Park officials say they don't plan to make changes other than to remind visitors how to stay safe. More than 6 million visitors come to the Grand Canyon every year. And with those visitors come safety challenges.
If more people are there, there's going to be more incidents.
Brandon Torres, the chief of emergency services, says people have even fallen off the rim for small reasons.
Somebody's hat blew off and they scrambled over the edge. There's actually been a couple of those.
On average, 17 people die a year at the Grand Canyon from taking selfies close to the edge, going past barriers, and things like dehydration. Ever since the park was created in 1919, there's been a search and rescue operation inside the park. There are barriers and signs that tell visitors to stay away from the edge of the canyon. Visitor Nancy Meyer says she doesn't think there needs to be any changes.
The rules and regulations should not be changed at all here at the Grand Canyon because it's such a natural and beautiful thing, and I really believe that people should be responsible.
Grand Canyon spokesman John Quinley says the park looks at common themes with injury and death statistics. If there are, he says they look at changing policies or interpretive signs. Quinley says these recent deaths aren't out of the ordinary.
There's not a common link, or the common link is, despite all of the suggestions about how to have a safe visit, for whatever reason a person chose something that was not safe.
Quinley says the park doesn't plan to change any policies, but staff are focused on emphasizing safety.
Making sure people are aware of their surroundings, understand that in the case of falls, that to just stay a respectful distance back from the rim of the canyon and sort of know where you are at all times.
There's also a concern with people staying hydrated. Now that temperatures are rising, Quinley says dehydration can quickly turn serious in the canyon. Grand Canyon National Park spends more than $400,000 a year to fund its emergency services operation. Last year, there were more than 1,000 emergency incidents. Live in the Broadcast Center, Jody Guerrero, Cronkite News.
Earlier today, President Donald Trump made a new threat to send armed soldiers to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Trump tweeted saying Mexico soldiers recently pulled guns on our National Guard soldiers, probably as a diversionary tactic for drug smugglers on the border. Better not happen again. We are now sending armed soldiers to the border. U.S. troops are already at the border to help reduce illegal crossings. Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador promised at a news conference today to investigate the border incident. The Department of Homeland Security announced it's moving forward with plans to use military funds in order to build border barriers in sections of Arizona and New Mexico, triggering reactions from both environmental groups and Arizona lawmakers. Cronkite News reporter Hattie Meyer tells us more about what this could look like in our state.
11 miles near Yuma, Arizona are included in the waivers issued by the Department of Homeland Security, circumventing environmental laws in place in order to build and replace barriers in that area. The decision sparking outrage from conservation groups like the Center for Biological Diversity, which has sued the Trump administration over the emergency declaration to fund border walls.
The Trump administration has just cast aside the most important environmental laws in our nation's history with the stroke of a pen. Borderlands residents and the wildlife that live here are now no longer protected by fundamental laws like the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and the Endangered Species Act.
In the waivers filed, DHS identifies the Yuma sector as, quote, an area of high illegal entry. In fiscal year 2018 alone, it states the United States Border Patrol apprehended over 26,000 illegal aliens in the Yuma sector. The document also says the existing barriers will be replaced with an 18 to 30-foot barrier that employs a more operationally effective design that is intended to meet Border Patrol's operational requirements, end quote. The barriers are being funded by the Department of Defense following President Trump's emergency declaration in February. For his part, Representative Raul Grijalva put out a statement saying in part, quote, the Trump administration consistently stoops to new lows when it comes to building the president's vanity wall, even if it endangers the public health of our communities in the environment we call home. By waiving landmark environmental laws like the Clean Air Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, and the Endangered Species Act, President Trump is sending a clear message to border residents. His political agenda is more important than their homes, health, and livelihoods, end quote.
Unfortunately, it's really become the norm that borderlands residents and the wildlife here watch their rights evaporate overnight in order to rush construction of a completely unnecessary, utterly senseless border wall.
In Phoenix, Hattie Meyer, Cronkite News.
Last month, the federal government announced it awarded contracts of nearly $1 billion to replace short barriers with tall fences in certain areas.
The southern border has seen an influx of immigrants over the last several months, and officials say they expect to make up to 1 million arrests by the end of this year.
With conservatives holding a solid 5-4 majority on the Supreme Court, anti-abortion activists are more optimistic than ever that they may finally reverse the court's 1973 Roe v. Wade decision.
Phoenix Bishop Thomas Olmsted was in Washington this week with others trying to keep the pressure on as part of the annual National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. Alyssa Klink has a story from our Washington bureau.
The words might have been familiar to any Catholic churchgoer.
For the sake of his sorrowful passion.
But the setting was definitely not a typical church. This was the Marriott Marquis in downtown Washington, where 1,400 people turned out to pray and hear speakers at the 15th annual National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. One of the main speakers was Phoenix Bishop Thomas Olmsted, who was giving a speech on a hotel stage, but could just as easily have been giving a sermon in a church pulpit.
Christ has been summoning me to lift up the truth proclaimed by the Second Vatican Council that abortion is an unspeakable crime.
Abortion was one of the main topics here, where the fight over Roe versus Wade still rages more than 40 years later. Speakers like Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood clinic director who is now a high-profile anti-abortion activist, urged the crowd to keep fighting.
Be proud of your faith, be bold of your faith, and let's continue to work until abortion is unthinkable.
Olmsted also decried the state of modern-day marriage, saying it is not treated with the respect it merits, reiterating points he made last year in a 66-page pastoral letter.
It's a difficult time for married couples to faithfully live out their vocation, which is so badly needed today.
Speakers got a sympathetic ear from acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, who praised President Donald Trump for allowing freedom of religion to flourish, especially for Catholics.
If you take a look at what the administration has done in the first 2.5 years, I think you can see the principles of our faith being manifest.
Olmsted made a point of steering clear of politics, but said it's encouraging to see public officials practicing their faith out in the open.
A lot of these are elected officials or others who are leaders in government or in commerce or different ways in society, and yet their Catholic faith is important to them too, and that's very important for us.
In Washington, Alyssa Klink, Cronkite News.
A new law is changing emergency voting procedures by limiting emergency voting centers and requiring Arizona voters to prove the reason keeping them from the polls on Election Day. SB 1090 states that a person who experiences an emergency must describe the circumstance, stating that the occurrence was unavoidable and could not be known in advance, and that without the emergency provisions, the person would otherwise be unable to vote in the election. Maricopa County Recorder Adrian Fontes doesn't think the emergency voting procedures needed to be changed.
I don't think election administrators should be asking voters for reasons why they cannot show up on Election Day. I think that's entirely up to the voter. I think that you could have violations of HIPAA regulations. There's definitely privacy concerns that are involved. And frankly, it just adds an extra layer of interference as against the fundamental right to vote.
Governor Doug Ducey signed the bill. The new regulations will be in effect for the 2020 election. Waiting in emergency rooms can last for several hours. One hospital is renovating their emergency department to better serve patients in the West Valley. Alexis Pulick spoke with the medical professionals for an update on emergency room care.
Emergency medicine can largely be seen as an ongoing, real-time needs assessment for the community around that hospital.
Patients may have long wait times because there isn't enough time and staff to treat people quickly.
We will take people and admit them, and often they will stay in the emergency department for 8 to 10 to 12 hours. Psychiatric patients can stay for days, if not weeks, because of the lack of resources on the other end to treat these challenges.
Location also determines service.
You really need to break it down into 3 different parts of the state, urban, rural, and tribal. And those areas each have their own challenge. Across the country, not just in Arizona, it's fairly easy to find emergency physicians willing to work in urban areas, especially desirable urban areas.
However, Banner Boswell Medical Center, as a part of its hospital's renovations, is building a bigger ER department to serve the growing West Valley.
Our current emergency department is not only old, but it only allows us to service about 40,000 patients a year. So this project allows us to expand to 62,000 patient visits a year.
According to Flores, 85% of patient traffic comes from the ER department. The Banner medical staff is preparing to handle the influx.
We're using more and more mid-level providers, so nurse practitioners, allied health providers, and there's a lot of ways that we can actually leverage our providers to be more productive.
Regardless of new hospitals, Arizona needs to improve its overall standard of emergency room care. According to the American Emergency Care Environment Report Card, Arizona gets an F in access to emergency room care.
Long story short, we are able to meet the challenge if we're given sufficient resources, but the challenge is greater than the resources that we face, and we are very resource rich already. We're hoping for most of the team that we need to be there. That's number one. And then number two, we're hoping for the resources out in the community to address the need of the population.
The Banner Boswell Medical Center renovation is expected to be completed next year, coinciding with the hospital's 50th anniversary.
Coming up next, how 1 penny can make a difference.
And how Republican leaders are coming together, calling for a boost in sales tax to pay for education.
Plus, the internet is not always a safe place, especially for kids. How students learn tips on being secure digital citizens.
As journalists at Cronkite News, we report on stories that matter to you by focusing on the local impact. We dig deeper and work tirelessly to keep you informed.
Live in Wickerburg.
Live in Los Angeles. In Cleveland. In Washington. In Louisville.
From Jerusalem.
Live in Philadelphia. From around the world to right here in Phoenix.
At Cronkite News, we report the facts and stick to the truth.
Millions of people die every year from drinking dirty water. I would never have felt I had the ability to do something without ASU pushing me. We built filtration systems out of local materials with the people. To see those kids drink clean water for the first time, it's the most rewarding feeling that you can ever have. I went to ASU because I wanted to change the world. The thing I never would have expected is how the world would have changed me.
Republican leaders gathered this morning at the state capitol to make a final push for education funding this legislative session. State GOP Chairwoman Kelly Ward took the podium to call for support of what's being called the penny proposal. If it passes the state legislature, voters would get to decide in 2020 if they want to pay an additional penny in sales tax toward education. The tax would boost education funding by about $520 million to more than $1.3 billion per year, based on current estimates. Google is taking the initiative to educate students to become more digitally literate by talking about issues like password security, identity phishing, and digital awareness on social media.
Cronkite News reporter Madeline Holler was in Glendale this morning to see this internet safety program in action.
Elementary and middle schoolers at Sierra Verde STEAM Academy got to experience an interactive program called Be Internet Awesome, where they learned 5 tips on how to be secure digital citizens. During the 45-minute presentation led by Google, students were asked true or false questions about threats on the internet. While many students appeared to know about digital dangers, Google shared these tips. Share with care, don't fall for fake, secure your secrets, it's cool to be kind, and when in doubt, talk it out. Cybersecurity has become a priority for the state of Arizona. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko says that more schools should adopt the program, as well as adults should likewise become educated on internet security.
Children's identities need to be held safe. If they post pictures that they wouldn't want the whole world to see, they need to be very careful about this. They also need to make sure that they're not clicking on links that look suspicious and giving out their passwords to unscrupulous people.
The students I spoke with say they need to create stronger passwords and be more aware of what they post on social media. Live in the control room, Madeline Holler, Cronkite News.
A new light rail station designed to help people with disabilities opened today in Phoenix.
Coming up next on Cronkite News, we'll tell you what this new station means to them.
Welcome to another edition of Cronkite Sports Now. I'm Taylor Rocha. Let's talk sports.
For the latest on local sports and beyond, we've got you covered.
Let's do this thing.
We challenge reporters to go beyond, a game story. We want stories with depth.
It's just a crucial step from the college experience into the professional experience while you're still in school.
At Cronkite Sports Now, watch the journalists of tomorrow cover sports today.
Cronkite Noticias is the Spanish-speaking division of Cronkite News, covering topics such as economics, education, sustainability, immigration, and border relations. Cronkite Noticias strives to serve the Spanish-speaking community in Arizona. Under the guidance of prominent Spanish-speaking professionals, students at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism develop content for our broadcast partner, Univision, as well as on Facebook and Twitter. Explore Cronkite Noticias at cronkitenoticias.azpbs.org.
The first new light rail stop built with funds from Transportation 2050 funding is set to open tomorrow. As Nicole Hernandez reports, the station is different than any other stop in the city.
The first train is arriving at this brand new light rail stop near 50th Street in Washington.
I'm really excited.
Excited for a much shorter commute.
I travel from 19th Avenue and Camelback and I get off at 44th Street in Washington. Then I have to drive a mile to work every day that I work.
Tony Jackson drives that mile in his powered wheelchair.
I was born with arthrogryposis. It's a congenital disease, which means it was from birth. Where my joints are affected. So my joints a lot of them are fused together and I have a limited range of motion.
The new stop is just feet from Ability 360 and features a platform that is more ADA accessible than any other stop.
The platform is wider. 2 people that use wheelchairs can pass each other. It has the photo detection at the stop lights so that if you enter the area of the stoplight, it's going to automatically detect that you want to cross the street. And of course, the shading.
All things most riders might not notice, but that make a big difference for the Ability 360 community.
It's going to give a lot more access to a lot of people.
In Phoenix, Nicole Hernandez, Cronkite News.
Construction started back in 2017 for this stop and cost almost $23 million to build. An annual study finds Metro Phoenix's air quality has greatly deteriorated over this past year. Phoenix ranks 7th for the dirtiest air among American cities when it comes to ozone. According to the American Lung Association's annual State of the Air report for 2018, from 2017 to 2018, Phoenix moved from 20th to 13th nationwide for 24-hour particle pollution and from 50th to 32nd for year-round particle pollution. Extra smoke and particles from last summer's California wildfires lingered in Phoenix heat, contributing to high levels of air pollution.
And I'm joined by weathercaster Jordan Evans. Jordan, can you tell us more about why air pollution is so high here in the valley?
So on top of the things that Amani explains about smoke from wildfires in California, the main thing that contributes to our ozone here is the heat and the calm winds, because it radiates all of those chemicals off of our roads here and those buildings here in the valley. So and that's going to be the case as we head into the rest of the week, because we're heating this forecast up pretty quickly.
Well, as it heats up, you're telling me I can get out of this suit and jump in the pool, right?
Oh, I think so. And in fact, I might be joining you this weekend as well. Let's talk about it currently. We've got temperatures in the 90s still as we take you outside. Not a cloud in the sky. Definitely complete opposite from what we saw yesterday after a pretty stormy and dark day across the state yesterday. And again, those temperatures holding on to 93. We have not topped 95 yet at Sky Harbor. We will likely get there here in the next hour or so. Winds are calm, and as we talk about it tonight, we're probably going to need those short sleeves and t-shirts as well, with 91 degrees at 6 p.m. 80s will kick in at 8 p.m., falling to those low 80s by 10 o'clock tonight. Now, as we track those temperatures out for you tomorrow here in the Valley of the Sun, we'll go with 60s in the morning, actually 70s, I should say, at 8 a.m. Then it's going to be up to the 80s by 10 o'clock, 90s kicking in by noon, and then 2 o'clock up to 95, 97 starting at 4 and 6. In fact, some places down along the Salt River could even top that 100-degree mark tomorrow. And if we don't do it tomorrow, we will certainly be doing it here in the Valley of the Sun on Friday. Now, again, air quality is going to go in an unhealthy for sensitive groups range tomorrow, which means if you have conditions like asthma or COPD, you want to limit your time outside, as you may have difficulty breathing, especially during Friday and Saturday when those temperatures remain on the warm side. Now, across the state, temperature-wise, no freezes to track for you this time. 38 at the Grand Canyon, 39 in Flagstaff, so a couple cool spots. 47 in Show Low, 57 out in Globe, and 70s up and down that Colorado River Valley. But high temperatures out there tomorrow are going to top those triple digits from Lake Havasu City south into Yuma. Gila Bend getting at 99 tomorrow, 98 here officially here in Phoenix, 79 in Payson, just like up in Flagstaff, topping out at 71 degrees tomorrow. Now, for the next 7 days, we're going to keep those temperatures on the warm side. So if we don't do it tomorrow, for sure on Friday. In fact, we could tie that record on Friday, set back in 1992 at 101. Back down to 98 on Saturday. Some clouds increase Sunday and Monday as a cold front comes through. We will see those 80s come back as we head into next week. And guys, I got to tell you, in fact, long-range models do show those 80s sticking with us as we finish out the month of April here and well into actually the first week in May. So as long as we get through this weekend, I think we'll be, pretty good shape.
I still don't think I'm ready for the triple-digit heat, though.
Well, you know what, Amani? I think I am ready for grilling in the sun. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure. And again, if I can get an invite over there this weekend, I'm over there.
Oh, you got it. Come on. We got some steaks, some vegetables. We're grilling it all.
Coming up, a community mural project for immigrants to tell their stories through art.
We'll show you how these murals are meant to represent the barriers and bridges of migration experiences.
As journalists at Cronkite News, we report on stories that matter to you by focusing on the local impact. We dig deeper and work tirelessly to keep you informed.
Live in Wickerburg.
Live in Los Angeles, in Cleveland, in Washington, in Louisville.
From Jerusalem.
Live in Philadelphia. From around the world to right here in Phoenix.
At Cronkite News, we report the facts and stick to the truth.
Millions of people die every year from drinking dirty water. I would never have felt I had the ability to do something without ASU pushing me. We built filtration systems out of local materials with the people. To see those kids drink clean water for the first time, it's the most rewarding feeling that you can ever have. I went to ASU because I wanted to change the world. The thing I never would have expected is how the world would have changed me.
As the topic of immigration continues to dominate much of our national conversation, one local artist and professor is using art to tell the story of being an immigrant. Cronkite News reporter Walter Panate tells us more about it.
The name of the project is Barriers and Bridges. They've given it this name after several of the students said they felt people were either building barriers against them, while on the other hand, communities have worked together to build bridges towards better understanding.
We're all connected. We all have similar stories, and we all need each other. I mean, you can't fight hate with hate.
That's the message Hugo Medina has left emblazoned in this Phoenix mural. The work of art inspired by the immigration stories shared by the students he teaches at ASU. Medina says the creation of the piece has been a collaborative effort between the muralists and volunteers.
Art can bring out what is most humane of a person. Their feelings, their well-being, their story.
ASU senior Yolati Perez says her mom came to the U.S. when she was pregnant with her. She says the experience of being an immigrant is something that's deeply affected her and her family.
I've seen the prejudices and the racism that happens when you're an immigrant. That's why it was very important for me to participate in this event.
Everyone came to pick up one of these spray cans to create a mural. Those who helped create it hope that anyone who comes across it will see the true meaning of it.
Medina teaches a class titled Facing Immigration, where he encourages students from different cultural backgrounds to explore their own immigration story and tell it through art.
I'm hoping to have people have conversations about immigration, migration, and humanity. Because in reality, we're all humans, we all migrate.
With the migrant situation that we're having, hopefully we can shed some light with this mural and help bring some happiness and some joy.
The mural is located in the parking lot adjacent to the downtown Phoenix YMCA. It's not 100% finished. Medina says that the goal is to have it completed in the next couple of weeks. In the studio, Walter Penate, Cronkite News.
Cronkite News is proud to be the news division of Arizona PBS. Here's what's coming up on Arizona PBS and PBS NewsHour.
On the next Arizona Horizon, we will get an update on what's happening at the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation and new treatment ideas for serious back injuries that come from golf swings. On the next Arizona Horizon.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next NewsHour, our series, Warnings from Antarctica, looks at how the history of the continent has fostered scientific cooperation among countries. That's Wednesday on the PBS NewsHour.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.